Darkcast Network. Welcome to the dark side.
Closing shift at a video store. What could go wrong? In 1993, two 20-year-olds were brutally murdered inside a West Coast video in Warminster.
And somehow, with DNA evidence and decades of investigation, no one has ever been caught. What really happened inside that store after hours? This is the West Coast Video Murders.
Hi, everyone, and welcome to episode 34 of Stop Who Does That. I'm your host, Jackie.
And I'm your host, Jenna.
And we hope everyone is having a great week. Why do I always have to talk about my week first? But I don't know. I worked late last night. Again, guys, that's the theme. I'm always working, recording, editing.
Do you have any exciting Mother's Day plans coming up this weekend?
No, I haven't even thought of Mother's Day.
Me either, but except it looks like a nice day, so I definitely want to get outside. Ooh. Yeah, it looks to be in the 70s here. You know, we're in May. May in Pennsylvania is, some days are cold, some days are warm. It's not consistent, usually till like Memorial Day weekend.
But today's a nice dreary day.
Yeah.
I like the dreary days because I just want to, and I'm off today. So I'm like, I just want to lay around and do nothing. That's kind of my theme on my days off. And I actually force myself to make appointments because I'm like, I need to actually do something productive. But yeah, I've just been trying to clean the house. And my friend Troy, which we had on the podcast previously, Troy and Tatiana, they're from my paranormal team, Experivit Paranormal. They started a podcast called Channel 13 Horror Rewind. Just want to give them a shout out. And because of them, I had to check out this show called Marianne on Netflix. It's a horror, I guess, miniseries. And it's so bizarre, and it's dubbed because it's originally in French, and I normally don't like dubbed stuff, but it kind of sucked me in. So I guess the recommendations are pretty good.
Yeah, I don't usually like dubbed stuff either.
Yeah.
I just have a hard time paying attention to it and with the subtitles and stuff. But yeah,
you should check it out.
I will. I'll have to check it out. It sounds good. Yeah.
It's an interesting premise, and even though like the mouth movements don't match the voice, it still kind of works. I don't know. Because I feel like you lose the actor's initial intent when it's not done organically, but it kind of works for this genre, I guess.
Yeah, interesting.
All right. Well, we had an interview this week with a victim's family member, and Jenna, what an amazing woman. She was so sweet.
Yeah,
I just love her so much.
Part of our special project that we're working on coming up later this month. And yeah, we were honored to be able to speak with her, and we're excited to share that with everyone.
Yeah, we can't wait to get that out. That's coming out later this month. And like we keep saying, there's going to be a huge ask of all of you. We need your help. This woman needs your help to help get answers for her sister. This case has gone cold, not because there's not enough evidence. It's because the police aren't doing anything. And I hate to say that to our men in blue because, I have a lot of respect for them. But I mean, this is pretty egregious what's happening here. So we need to get that out. We need to go Nancy Grace and get it out.
Yep, everywhere. All the social media platforms, and get it in front of the police and put the pressure on. So that's part of our special project that we will be sharing as we get later in the month of May.
Right. And Jenna, tell everyone where they can leave us a review.
Yeah, so if you could please be so kind as to leave us a review and 5-star rating on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, subscribe to our YouTube channel. It's all a simple way to support us and support the podcast. And we really appreciate you, and we appreciate all of our listeners. And in fact, this episode, Jackie, was recommended by one of our fans and listeners on Instagram, Jessie, So thank you, Jesse, for recommending this case to us. It was a really good one. I didn't know about it actually in researching. You know, it was close to our area. It's from the 90s. So thank you, Jesse. And if anyone else has any recommendations, definitely message them. You can shoot us a message on Instagram, TikTok, or email us at stopwhodosthatpodcast@gmail.com.
Also, if you or someone you know has a family member that is a victim and their case has gone cold or there's not much media attention about it, and, you know, whether it happened in Pennsylvania or elsewhere, we can certainly meet with you virtually and record with you as well to get that case out there. A lot of the times we find out after we put out a case that people come out of the woodworks and they're like, well, I knew this person or I da 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 da. And we're like, well, we wish we had known that. But then also we don't know how to get in touch with those people either.
Yeah.
So if you want to approach us as well, you can send an email to stopwhodosthatpodcast@gmail.com, or you can message us on Instagram or TikTok, send us a DM, and we'll get in contact with you.
Yeah. Yes.
All right. Well, Jenna, it's time to dive in, and dive in we shall. So here we go. We are taking you guys to Warminster, Pennsylvania. Warminster, Pennsylvania is the kind of place where nothing like this is supposed to happen. Back in the early 90s, the Rosemore Shopping Center was just another quiet strip mall. Some stores, a video rental spot, people coming and going like any normal night. But on November 10th, 1993, something inside West Coast Video shattered that sense of normal forever. This is the West Coast Video murders of Bryan Benson and Seann Campbell.
Like 30 years searching for answers. 30 years ago, Bryan fatally stabbed while finishing their shifts at a Warminster video rental store. Bucks County authorities have had few leads, but the case remains a priority. Here's Joe Holden.
It was closing time at the West Coast Video in the Rosemore Shopping Center in Warminster. Both Seann Campbell and Bryan Benson were on the clock. The two 20-year-olds were wrapping things up when they were brutally attacked.
It's a terrible case of being in the wrong place at the wrong time.
It was November 10th, 1993. The men were repeatedly and savagely stabbed. The double murder investigation has remained open and on the books here in Bucks County. Detectives and prosecutors are hopeful someday they will catch a break. This is a case that has haunted your office.
It has. It's haunted my office. It's haunted me personally because I was a brand new ADA when these two young men got murdered. And not only that, they grew up in the town that I grew up next door in. We went to the same high school. We were only a few years apart from each other. So this really resonated with me and has stuck with me now for 3 decades.
The case, deeply personal for those in the highest reaches of law enforcement in the county, roiled the quiet Warminster community. Both Seann and Bryan were well liked. A lead theory, this deadly crime was a robbery gone bad. District Attorney Matt Weintraub says some early theories turned out to be incorrect, including the discovery of an earring that was early on suspected to be the killer's. Weintraub says that wasn't so.
We did locate an earring at the scene of these two murders, and that has taken on this mythological proportions in the eyes of the public. Unfortunately, or fortunately, we've been able to diffuse that myth, at least professionally, in that earring is not connected to the killers. I wish that it were, because it might lead us to somebody.
Last year, CBS 3 spoke with Bryan Benson's mother, Janice, after the families donated unused reward money to charity.
No matter what, there would never be any closure.
Yeah.
You don't close something like that.
Even with the passage of time, it is hoped a killer will be found. The case remains open and very active.
It would give me not only great professional satisfaction, but a lot of personal satisfaction if I could bring these two young men's killers to justice.
For CBS 3 Mysteries, this is Joe Holden.
Well, let's talk a little bit about Bryan and Seann. Bryan Benson and Seann Campbell were both 20 years old. They were college students working part-time at a West Coast video store like we mentioned, in the Rosemore Shopping Center on County Line Road in Warminster, PA, in Bucks County, which we know Bucks County from some of our other cases that we've been to. Bucks County is a beautiful part of Pennsylvania with a lot of farms and country clubs, wealthy families, really good schools. And this is where Bryan and Seann had grown up. They grew up together. They had gone to high school together, and now they're working together, their part-time job. They were both still living at home in Bucks County, Pennsylvania, while they went to college, and they worked part-time, which a lot of us do when we're in college. You know, if you're not going to your college classes, you're working part-time. And a video store is a great place to work because if you're not obviously going to night school, then you can work there at night and on the weekends. And that is what Bryan and Seann did. They weren't just coworkers, they were good friends, the kind of friendship that comes from spending hours together in the video store, you know, passing time during slow nights and joking around and doing what coworkers do in their early 20s. And I know from working part-time jobs around that age too, when you check the schedule and you see that one of your favorite coworkers or friends is on with you that night or that week, it makes your shift so much better.
Yes.
Like, you know, like we mentioned, just joking around, it just makes like everything better. Dealing with the customers, closing, you know, cleaning, everything is so much better if you know that one of your like work besties is going to be on schedule with you. And that night, in November, Bryan and Seann were on the schedule together. So I can just imagine they were having that kind of night. Just as the night wound down, they were joking around, passing the time, you know, and just kind of hanging out. And
Yeah, I have some of my best memories from college is like at work, actually, because I worked, my gosh, like 25, 30 hours a week in college.
So did
full
I.
time.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, I mean, I worked as I previously mentioned, I worked at a bank where I met Morgan Mengel. And we had some fun times in the drive-through, you know, like that's where we went to all like, you know, gossip and talk about things. So, yeah, I can imagine they were having a good time that night as well.
I worked at a hair salon for many years, high school into college. I worked at a hair salon, and yeah, we would all, you know, I worked at the front, and then whenever the hairstylists were having breaks or no clients, we would just kind of sit in their chair and like goof off. They would play with our hair. The makeup artists, if they had downtime, they would do our makeup. Sometimes we would go to the back and paint our nails. Like when it was a slow night, we just had the best, like you said, just the best memories. So I'm sure that Bryan and Seann did too. And Jackie and I also have a lot of memories of going to the video rental store.
Oh, yes.
You know, around here, Jackie, in the Lehigh Valley, it was Blockbuster and Hollywood Video were like the most popular. West Coast Video was, I think, more down towards Philly, but you remember going with your family. Like when we were in elementary school, we would go with our family and like pick out a movie for the weekend, get some candy.
Yeah.
As you get older, you would go with your date. I have so many memories of going to Blockbuster on a Friday night with my date and just walking around, you know, seeing the new releases, seeing the
Netflix
horror.
and chill took on a different meaning.
It was
you had to physically go pick out your movie.
Yeah, for those listeners that were, you know, growing up or a teenager, like we were around those times, it was like a thing to do. Like it was an event. You would walk around the store and should we get this? Should we get that? You know, and then
I have memories of my dad taking us every Friday night. We'd go up to West Coast Video in Royersford and pick out a movie. And I just remember thinking that place was like so magical and
it was. They
very stimulating.
It was because it was so colorful, and they always had TVs up, you know, in the corners. And I remember,
movies.
Of course, every time I went there with a date, we would get a horror movie or like something scary. So, and then there was new releases, and then you always had, there was like 1 or 2 day rentals. So if you got the one night rental, one of you had to remember to go back the next day and drop it off. And
Yeah.
that's how we watched movies, back in the 90s and the early 2000s.
Yes, I still remember there being a Blockbuster in like 2008,
Uh-huh.
2009. And just for everyone's awareness, I Googled like what's the last known Blockbuster still standing, and it's located in Bend, Oregon.
Wow.
I'm sorry. Bend, Oregon. It's at 211 Northeast Revere Avenue. It's survived since 2019 because of community support and nostalgia. So,
Yeah,
if you live out there,
I'd love
go
to
for
see
it.
it. I've also seen they do like pop-up bars in the city with like Blockbuster, like a pop-up Blockbuster, like these bar. We should definitely go to one of those.
Oh yeah, the nostalgia. I mean,
Yeah.
growing up in the 90s was just something else. And I kind of the more when I saw Bryan and Seann's photos pop up, I feel like I do remember vaguely hearing about this. I was probably 5 when this happened.
Yeah,
So,
it's the pictures look like their high school senior picture, which
yeah.
they would have just graduated 2 years before.
Yeah.
And they look so handsome. They're like 90s, just your quintessential, like, good looking
Mullets.
college guys. I mean, what
Yeah,
could we-
and that clip of the mom and dad, like he looks so much like his dad.
I know.
That was
I
crazy.
know. So
Yeah.
that's, a little tour back in time of
Trip
the
down memory lane.
Yeah, the video stores, Blockbuster, Hollywood Video, and West Coast Video. They were all, movie rental stores. So that's kind of what was going on that night. Customers were coming and going, checking out. Now, it was a Wednesday night, so I could imagine it was kind of dead. Friday night was where it was at, and
Yeah.
maybe Saturday.
Friday and Saturday night.
Yeah, but I would imagine that Wednesday evening of November 10th was kind of dead. It started like any other shift, customers coming, going, the, movies being rented, candy being bought, and then the night slowly wound down as closing time approached. Like most video stores at the time, West Coast Video would have been closing around 10 p.m. that night, right as things slowed down and the last customers filtered out. I feel like I just want to say, back in the day, like places were open so much later.
I know.
I feel like ever since COVID, everything closes so early. Like even restaurants.
Even the bars.
Yes.
Yeah.
Like I want to go out to a restaurant and it's like, oh my God, they close at 9 p.m. So we don't have that much time. Like, I don't know. So it was different in the 90s. Things were still open late. So 10 p.m. in November, it would have been very cold, very dark. And things were coming to an end. And inside the store, Bryan and Seann were doing exactly what they had done so many times before, getting ready to close out the register, restock the movie shelves, lock up and head home to their families who were there waiting for them.
But Bryan and Seann didn't come home from work that evening. They had families who expected them home after a normal shift, parents, loved ones, and people who knew their routines and knew something was wrong when they didn't walk through the door at the time that they should have. Their family spent all night trying desperately to get a hold of them. And remember, back then, we didn't have cell phones at this point. So they're calling friends, neighbors, coworkers on the landline, disturbing them in the middle of the night.
Yeah.
And no one had seen or heard from Bryan or Seann since earlier in the night when they were at work. The owner of West Coast Video arrived at the store the next morning, Thursday, November 11th, ready to open the store like he always did, but something felt wrong. He noticed things weren't as they should have been. And we all know when we work somewhere regularly or even in our own home, the moment you walk in, you can sense that something's not right or that things are askew or not left where you put them. So I'm sure he's walking in, he's noticing that maybe there's still some videos in the box, right? That hadn't been collected. That he's noticing maybe there's signs that they were in the middle of doing something at the front desk and they were disturbed.
Maybe all the lights were on.
Yeah, or all the lights were on, like the proper closing procedures. I wonder if the front door was even locked.
Yeah, I wonder too.
I wonder. I don't think we know from the articles if it was. But as he entered the store and moved toward the back area, he made a horrifying discovery. Bryan and Seann were found dead inside a back room of the video store. Both 20-year-olds had been brutally brutally stabbed. The crime scene immediately raised questions for investigators. There were no signs of forced entry, suggesting Bryan and Seann may have either known the person who entered the store or willingly let them in after hours. And then there was the money. Some cash had reportedly been taken from the register, but other money was still left behind. Their wallets were also reportedly untouched. To investigators, it didn't look like a straightforward robbery, because why would some cash have been taken from the register and no cash from the boys' wallets? The attack itself was violent and personal. This wasn't a quick grab and run situation. Whoever committed this crime had gotten close to both young men inside that store. It does make you wonder, did the killer know them? Why was the attack so brutal, especially if it was just a robbery gone wrong? It seemed more emotionally charged due to the severity of their injuries. And somehow, despite the brutality of the murders, the killer managed to leave without immediately drawing attention. By the time police flooded the shopping center the next morning, the person responsible was long gone. And as I'm reading this, I had a few thoughts here. So there were no signs of forced entry. So that implies either the door was locked up or it was unlocked.
Or what if somebody came in during the evening and hid in the back?
Yeah, and waited till closing time after they locked the front doors. So we don't know if the door was locked or not when the opener arrived. Then it's like, why didn't this person have a gun? It was probably much easier to buy a gun back then than it is now. So does that imply they weren't old enough to buy a gun, or they didn't have enough money to buy a gun?
And
Why a
also,
knife?
these are two young college men that are athletic, strong,
Minding their own business.
How is he going to take both down? I always question
That doesn't make sense to me either.
And there was no reports of them being tied or bound. So how is one person going to stab both of them? I don't think that's plausible. To me, I'm thinking it may have been two people.
Well, I just had a thought. It had to be somebody either they knew, or maybe it was a customer that was playing them like, hey, can you help me out? Can I make a phone call?
Yeah.
My car broke down, and then maybe they were walking. I don't know if the phone was in the back. I'm just speculating. Maybe there was some ruse, right? And one of the boys walked this person back.
Yeah.
Stabbed him. And then the other one's like, hey, where are you? And comes walking back and walked into it.
Oh,
I don't know. It's just a thought.
Yeah, that's a good thought. And the whole robbery. Now, the police, like the video we played, the police are saying that the motive was likely robbery. I don't know if I believe that. If it was, why wasn't all the money taken? And why didn't they take the boys' wallets?
Unless they panicked.
Maybe. I mean,
they grabbed the stuff from the register and forgot to check the wallets.
Yeah, like, did they
were
not?
in a
Maybe
hurry.
they just didn't even think to grab the wallets. Yeah,
Possibility.
maybe things got a little out of control, like you said, and they just panicked and ran out.
But there's no way, kind of like why do I always bring up the Bryan coworker case? I don't know why. There's always something, but there's always something that ties me. Like, I make correlations in my brain. And when the Bryan coworker case happened, everyone kept saying he would have had defensive wounds. Like, you just stabbed 4 people, right? So wouldn't the person who've done this have defensive wounds? I wonder if the police even explored hospital records.
Right.
Or asked the hospital, did anyone check in at this time with a hand laceration? I mean, they easily could have played it off like I was cutting some fruit at home and cut my hand, And
it's 10 p.m. I mean, we know there are no surveillance cameras at this time. However,
none.
There was no eyewitnesses to say, I saw this make and model car in the parking lot after hours. I'd be interested to know or maybe police are keeping that close to the vest. They don't, they're not sharing that. But there was no eyewitness accounts at all of anything. The murders of Bryan Benson and Seann Campbell shocked the Warminster community. And police immediately began trying to piece together what happened inside the West Coast video after closing that night. From the beginning, investigators knew this wasn't going to be an easy case. One of the biggest mysteries was the lack of forced entry. Like we stated, there were no signs that someone had broken into the store, which led investigators to believe the victims may have known the killer or at the very least, didn't see the person as an immediate threat.
Right.
Jackie
Yeah.
said maybe they, put on some type of ruse like, my car broke down, I need to use the phone. Who knows?
Yeah.
So police are struggling with the motive at this point. At first glance, it may have looked like a robbery because some cash had been taken from the register, but other money was still left behind along with the victims' wallets. And that raised a huge question. If robbery was the goal, why leave the valuables behind? Like we said, maybe they got startled or something spooked them and they ran out. The brutality of the attack also suggested something more personal or emotional may have happened inside the store. As investigators processed the scene, they recovered physical evidence, including DNA. One of the most talked about pieces that the video mentioned was the diamond stud earring found at the crime scene. At first, authorities believed it could potentially be connected to the killer or someone involved in the murders. And this kind of spread, across the community that they got this diamond earring, and it just spread like wildfire and got everybody kind of talking about this earring. Do you know who owns an earring like this? Could it be someone you know? Over the years, investigators ran the DNA through databases hoping for a match as technology improved, but despite decades passing and forensic science advancing dramatically, no confirmed suspect has ever been identified. And that's part of what makes this case so frustrating. This case isn't where there was no evidence. Investigators actually do have DNA, and they did recover items from the scene. But somehow, the pieces have never fully come together. As the years passed, theories started to grow. Some people believe there may have been more than one attacker because, like I said, controlling and killing two young men inside a store would have been very difficult for one person. Others question whether the crime had been staged to look like a robbery. And I do think the violence and kind of like the overkill with the stabbing does suggest an emotional crime. I mean, I feel like, especially being men, like, I hate to say this, but with women, I feel like that's kind of more understandable. If the woman was about to be assaulted and put up a fight, that may have enraged the attacker to do many more stabbings. But for two men to be that brutally stabbed, both of them, I don't know, Jackie. It just does seem kind of emotional.
Yeah, well, I mean, Bryan Kohberger killed 4 people, but they were also intoxicated. So that kind of debilitated them. But they were, I would imagine, wide awake at 10 p.m. or possibly tired.
Yeah,
but
I just don't understand the
still not
overkill.
under the influence of anything that we know of. So that's why I'm thinking, well, it could have been 2 people, but it also could have just been one really clever person that, like I said, got one of them alone first, and then the other one followed looking for the other one, and then they ambushed them. Unfortunately, we don't have access to, the crime scene photos or anything like that. So we have no way of knowing.
Was it an enemy that maybe involving, I'm just throwing this out here, like we talked about in the Redner's CEO killing, was a woman involved? We know
It's always about a woman, though. Yeah.
It's like, a woman, an affair, cheating, life insurance, or money.
Maybe they owed them money for something.
I'm just like, all of a sudden, it's just popping into my head that maybe one of them was dating somebody that this killer was just broken up with that girl, and now she's dating one of them, and this guy was just that enraged and hateful.
Yeah,
Because
maybe.
I could see that being a trigger for the aggression. Like, you're not going to take my girl. This is my girl. And like, she'll never date you again. I feel like that may have been motive and a reason to explain the emotion behind so much of the brutal killing.
I feel like the police definitely would have explored that, but but I wonder if they just hit a dead end and they can't match DNA to somebody.
Yeah, less like this. They just started dating this girl, and like they didn't tell their family about her. Maybe what if they were just dating her for a week, or like she was on a break with her boyfriend, and maybe her and Bryan went on like 2 dates, and she didn't tell anyone. Well, she's probably not gonna come forward. I don't know. Unless the killer may have threatened her. I don't know. I just feel like that might be a motive.
Piss somebody off, or it was for money, but they panicked and only took money from the drawer. Either way, somebody out there knows something, as always. The question is, are they still alive at this point to be able to talk? And again, if any of our listeners have inside info or you know someone connected to this, feel free to reach out. We'll definitely to you. But then let's talk about this DNA and how over time now we have some technology that may be able to help. So in looking at this case, we thought it would be a great candidate for the now used genealogy forensic testing, like what was done in the Jody Seann case, to match the DNA collected at the crime scene to a relative. And then eventually through going through family trees, you can track it back to a killer. That's also how they got Bryan Kohberger in 6 weeks. They ran his DNA through a database and it likely matched to a distant family member. And then from there, they pinpointed their suspect. But through our research, we discovered it was not yet used in this case, and there could be a few reasons why. So as we're finding, this DNA is owned by the police. No one can really compel them to turn it over to an outside lab. And it does cost money for it to go to these outside labs, like Othram Labs. It costs a lot of money. And depending on the local police department, they may not have those funds. Another thing is the DNA profile may be incomplete. So sometimes the DNA recovered is degraded or mixed with multiple people or too partial for the genealogy databases. Traditional codists can sometimes use smaller samples. Genetic genealogy usually requires a stronger, cleaner DNA profile. Secondly, the DNA may not belong to the killer. So investigators may not be fully certain that the earring DNA came from the murder. And it sounds like as of now, they've concluded that it's not. But if they're talking about any other DNA collected, maybe under the boy's fingernails or on their person, you know, they could have interacted with several other people that day, right? And sometimes even exchanging a video, you know, like you could get touch DNA from that. So there were so many customers and employees coming through that they have to be careful to not chase people that are completely unrelated to the crime. Genealogy searches are expensive, like I said, and resource heavy. So a lot of places, a lot of smaller departments didn't aggressively begin using forensic genealogy until the late 2010s, 2020s, after the Golden State Killer was found. And like we said, they often need prosecutor approval, and the funding is a huge deal. And finally, they may have done it already privately and just never told us in the public. And that is very possible. The police don't disclose things publicly, especially in active cold cases, because one, they don't want the perp to know they're onto them, right? If they know you're onto them, they could leave the country.
They could be, you know, they could have something and now they're attempting to locate and track the person down. So, I mean, and that could take years. So I feel like the Bryan Kohberger case was solved so quickly because didn't the police get something from the trash?
Well, that's because they already had tracked the DNA back to the Kohberger family. And they needed something definitive to make sure that all that research they did was true. So they staked out, they staked out the parents' house. And they got a piece of trash that belonged to the father.
Yes.
And they matched the father to Bryan. And that was a 99% match or whatever. So then they were like, well, that's right. They matched it to the DNA profile. And it said, you know, Bryan Kohberger's dad is 99% the perpetrator or the unknown sub's father. So then they knew, okay, we have the right person. We can now move in.
It's definitely, I feel like it's one of those things that sounds easier than it really is. It's a lot.
I mean, you could, that's like taking your DNA, Jenna, you know, you're the unknown sub, running it through 23andMe. And let's pretend no one in your immediate family has ever submitted DNA to 23andMe. And it pops for, I don't know, 7th great grandfather, right? That's where they start with. And they're like, oh, fuck, now I gotta go forward 7 generations and try to figure out which of these hundreds of people that are related to this common ancestor is Jenna. You know?
That's a lot. That's kind of a lot.
And then each person that pops up, they got to go do a background on them. Like, where do they live? Did they live in this area at the time? Does their age meet the profile that we're looking for? So it does take time, but I feel like it is possible. They could narrow it down to a few people at least.
Right.
Yeah. So, and the question is like, how big are these databases? Because I don't think 23andMe and Ancestry actually give up your DNA.
That's a good point.
I don't think they give it over to law enforcement. Let's just pause for a second and find out. 23andMe, do they turn their databases over to law? Because I think it has to be. No, it doesn't. But there are some nuances. 23andMe says it will not release individual genetic data to law enforcement without your consent. And per law enforcement, they require a valid legal process like a subpoena. Okay, so police cannot freely search 23andMe. They cannot upload crime scene DNA and run matches. It's not used like GED match or forensic genealogy sites. But what they could do is request specific user data with a court order or subpoena. So I guess they could say like, can we get DNA on what you guys have in 23andMe on the common relative, I guess. So they have to be very specific, it sounds like. And then there's two different databases here. There's consumer DNA companies like 23andMe and Ancestry, and then there's forensic genealogy databases like GED Match and Family Tree DNA. So some of them allow law enforcement searches. That's how the Golden State Killer case was solved. But then there are concerns with 23andMe because they've had data breaches. So, I mean, I'm sure hackers are hacking that, trying to do the same thing, right?
Well, they have it, and, it's right there.
Yeah, and who's to say, like, some of the releases you fill out for 23andMe, like, you know how, like, auto checks things, and if you're not paying attention, like, what if you are consenting to something that you don't realize you're consenting to? And to be honest with you, I don't care if they use my DNA to find a killer.
Yeah, it seems like there's so much legal involved in this as well. It's not a simple thing, as we've been learning with our other project.
Yeah.
So this ties in nicely to that.
Yeah, it does.
But yeah, it's been over 30 years since Bryan and Seann were found brutally murdered inside the West Coast video store. And their case is still unsolved and remains an active cold case. No arrests, no public suspect. And despite DNA evidence, investigators still haven't been able to answer the question that's haunted this case since 1993. Who walked into that West Coast video and brutally killed two young men working a closing shift? For many people in the Warminster area, this case never faded away. It shattered the sense of safety people felt in their own community. A quiet suburban shopping center became the scene of one of Bucks County's most disturbing cold cases. But for Bryan and Seann's families, this isn't just a mystery, it's personal. More than 3 decades have passed without answers, without closure, and without justice for two 20-year-olds who should have had their entire lives ahead of them. And somewhere out there, someone likely knows exactly what happened inside that store that night. Maybe it was a secret someone kept quiet out of fear. Maybe it was loyalty. Maybe someone thought enough time had passed and they'd never have to answer for what they've done. As technology continues to improve, we can only hope that police will get the missing piece they need to solve this case. Bryan and Seann's families have created a reward fund with donations from the community, totaling, Jackie, $52,000.
Wow.
The reward money
That's
has never been claimed. And that again speaks to somebody knows some things, not saying anything. It's reward money.
It's worth more than $52,000, it sounds like. But you know what? When it comes to Nancy Guthrie, whoever that person was that was blackmailing TMZ, they wanted 1 Bitcoin. And that's like, I think it was like $65,000.
Yeah.
So, I mean, if somebody can turn over a perp for Nancy Guthrie for 65, can you turn over the perp for 52? I don't know.
It's just like mind blowing how this has been a cold case for over 30 years.
And it sounds like the family has given up.
Well, what they have done with the help of their attorneys is in 2021, they turned that reward fund into the Benson Campbell Memorial Fund. And now the total is up to $61,500. The families want to donate portions of the fund to food pantries and organizations that support youth with disadvantages, as well as continue to keep Bryan and Seann's memories alive. And for more information, and we can link this in the show notes, how you can donate to the Memorial Fund, you can contact Karen Sutman, President, the Warminster Rotary Foundation, at ksutman@jlmedia.com, or reach her at 215-439-8790, or Manuel Gamez Jr., Director of Communications at the Bucks County District Attorney's Office, at Gamez, G-A-M-I-Z, at buckscounty.org, or 215-348-6298. Bryan and Seann would have been 53 years old today, maybe married, maybe even have children of their own, Jackie, or grandchildren. And that was all, I'm like getting chills. That was all taken away from them the night of November 10th, 1993. We know their families are continuing to keep the memory alive, and we pray this case is solved like sometime in their lifetime. Their parents are getting old now. And it's just really heartbreaking. They were so young and they had their whole future ahead of them. And all their peers have moved on, married, have families, have children, careers and travel. And Bryan and Seann never got to do any of that. They barely got to live. I mean, 20 years old is so young.
Oh my gosh, they were just starting their lives. And think about it, in 30 years, they could have had a 30-year-old by now. They could have had a grown child, like you said, grandchildren, and how long this has taken to not be solved. If anyone has information out there, someone from that night that maybe had some marks on them that they couldn't explain, or someone that went to William Tennant High School that had a beef with these guys. Time has gone on now, and maybe you're feeling guilty. Maybe you want to say something. Call the Warminster Police Department. Do the right thing. These families have a right to know what happened to their loved ones. And that's something in this case we're working on. And speaking with this family member, it was kind of jarring for me to see. Obviously, she's in middle age now, but then you're looking at photos of the victim and she's still so young.
Everything is frozen.
Life has gone on without her.
Everything is frozen in time. And 2026 is so far different than 1993.
Yep.
And it's just so heartbreaking.
So heartbreaking.
Yeah.
Well, we thank you for joining us today and revisiting a cold case like this, a cold local case. And if anyone went to William Tennant High School in the early 90s, this is for you. Maybe you knew Bryan and Seann, and maybe you might know something. So
and feel free to message us on Instagram, TikTok, or our Gmail if you did go to high school with them, or you want to share a memory, or something about that time. Definitely message us. We love and we read every single message from you guys. So, and thank you again for the support and for listening today.
Because honestly, the fact that we forgot about this case, right? Like, it was so long ago. So many people listening probably either know of this case or they're like, I've never heard of this case. But think about it, Bryan and Seann are forgotten.
Yeah.
They're just forgotten, and life has gone on without them. So by us talking about it, we're keeping their memory alive. And if you knew them, you want to come on and talk, feel free. And we'll just keep their memory going, because that is the only way that the dead can keep on living through us.
Well said. Yeah. Well,
all right.
Thank you.
We'll see you next time, guys.